respecting all cultures makes every student feel recognized and valued. The complexity of the modern world is continuously increasing. We live in an uncertain world where change is rapid and unpredictable. Universities have a pivotal role to play in preparing graduates for jobs that don't exist yet, for technologies that haven't been invented, and for problems that need innovative solutions.
Universitas 11 Maret has three main agendas toward a world-class university. Acceleration in various phases of development is needed by embracing the foundation of UNS Benteng Pancasila. Therefore, 5 strategic policy pillars were decided.
It is important to understand that flexibility and adaptability are the keys to growth in the rapidly changing 21st century. This is what encouraged Universitas 11 Maret to shift its governance and management to an autonomous public university. With this change, Universitas 11 Maret will have the autonomy and independence to improve the quality of teaching, learning, and research in implementing the 5 development pillars of Universitas 11 Maret to accelerate its transformation process towards becoming a world-class university. Universitas 11 Maret.
Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the ICCBA 2022, the first international conference on creative economy, business management and accounting. We welcome you all at this great occasion, ladies and gentlemen, and on behalf of the organizing committee, I'm Albert, would like to extend our gratitude and appreciation for your presence here, ladies and gentlemen. Also, at this beautiful occasion, please do allow me to greet the Honorable, the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs of Universitas 11 Maret, the Dean of Vocational School of Universitas 11 Maret, the Conference Organizing Committee Chair, and also our Dean keynote speakers, Professor Andrea Moro from Cranfield University, the United Kingdom. That we are so lucky here, Professor Moro can be here with us, and we're going to have this conference. Also, I would like also to greet Professor Arifin Anggriawan from Purdue University Northwest, the United States of America, and also Professor Irwan Trinugroho from Universitas 11 Maret, Indonesia. And last but not least, we're going also to have our dear speaker, Associate Professor Subhash Abhayawansa from Swinburne University, Australia. And also I would like to greet the moderators, all presenters, and all participants. It's really an honor that you are here and actively participate at this international conference, ladies and gentlemen. Well, honorable guests, ICCBA 2022 is an annual conference held by 5 associate degrees study program of UNS Vocational School, namely the Marketing Management, Business Management, Trade Management, Accounting, and Taxation departments. And this event is supported by eKaigi, your partner for conference. Responding to post-pandemic recovery signals, the business perspective is the theme of ICCBA 2022 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic striking the global health and economy. Government around the world previously issued restrictions on travel, gatherings, and meeting, which clearly bring unwanted impacts on business. Therefore, ICCBA served as an ideal academic platform research to present their findings, perspective, so business can recover together and grow stronger. So ladies and gentlemen, to start with, let us sing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, next I would like to pass the microphone to the conference chair to deliver her report. Ibu Desi Mayasari SAMSC, now the time is yours.
Good morning, the honorable speakers, distinguished guests, and participants joining today's online. On the behalf of the committee, I would like to thank to everyone for being here with us in this very special occasions. Today mark our first international conference on creative economy, business management, and accounting as the collaborations of 5 study programs in vocational school Universitas 11 Maret, taxations, accounting, business management, marketing management, and trade management. We also would like to express our sincere appreciations to the keynote speakers, Professor Andrea Moro, Professor Subas Abayawansa, Professor Arifin Anggriawan, Professor Irwan Trinugroho, UNS Research Center LPPM, and our journals affiliations, Journal Economy, Journal of Accounting and Investment, Jurnal Management dan Pemasaran, Jurnal Akuntansi Indonesia, who generously help us make this event come together to become a success. In today's gathering, people from 5 continents and more than 7 countries discuss together to share the insight in the business world after 2 years of the pandemic hitting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to take too much of your time, so hopefully we'll be full of fun and full of learning without any more delaying. Mr. Larbert, this stage is yours. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the conference chair. You may big round applause, give big round applause. It's totally okay, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, for the next agenda, I would like to give the chance to the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs of Universitas 11 Maret to deliver his remarks and later open the conference officially. Professor Ahmad Yunus, now the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good night in UK and US for presenter in their countries. The Honorable Professor Subhas Abhayawansa from Swinburne University of Technology, Melbourne, Australia. Professor Arifin Anggriawan from Purdue University, Northwest, United States. Professor Andrea Moro, he is now in Universitas Blas Maret, Solo. Thank you for your coming in UNS Solo. Directly flight from UK to Solo 2 days ago. From Cranfield School of Business, Cranfield University, United Kingdom. Professor Irwan from Universitas Blas Maret, and all of participants who attend in this conference. First of all, I would like to welcome you to first international conference on creative economy, business management, and accounting, or ICCBA. ICCBA is the International Conference on Creative Economy, Business Management, and Accounting. It's a big annual agenda held by the 5 associate degree study program. This program being part of UNS Vocational School vision to become a center for the development of sustainable and superior human resource at the international level based on noble value of national culture. This program provides an ideal academic platform for researchers to present their latest research finding. The global health crisis that we know, the disease COVID-19, is a unique challenge that impacted many participants in this conference. Governments around the world are now issuing restrictions on travel gathering and also to limit and slow the spread of COVID-19. On this day, amount of applied science adopted by the business world during the pandemic provide a new view of the world of education to able to move agilely to align the curriculum to suit the need of the industrial world through the latest research in the business world. The result of this research have been applied in the workplace, will be studied to be reprocessed into a business curriculum design that can provide benefit for academic community and industrial world. The secondly, ICCBA aims to increase capacity of lecture in the field of dissemination of applied research, which will later be published in the international journal, especially indexed by the Scopus. Through publication in the international journal, the vocational school lecturer in the social field can gain skill, competency, and experience to take part in the international reputation. ICCBA 2022, held by the Vocational School Universitas Blas Maret, with the theme Responding to Post-Pandemic Recovery Signal, the Sustainable Business Perspective. Considering that the current business have started a lot of recovery process and rise in the face of pandemic for approximately 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Apart from being a mean to introduce research and applied business, ICCBA is an activity that will provide insight related to higher education, especially for vocational program. Keynote speakers are practitioners and academic who are directly involved in the business world. And the audience of this activity is academician with the vocational background, master student, doctoral student, diploma student, business practitioner, consultant, government agency, and association from Indonesia, United States, United Kingdom, Pakistan, Malaysia, Taiwan, New Zealand, and Madagascar. Through the dissemination of this conference, it is hoped that there will be an understanding between the business world and the industrial world. This understanding will create active collaboration in the future, including obtaining the latest insight in the business world. Finally, have a great conference, and hopefully our participation in this event can be our contribution to the community. We say Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Officially, I open the ICCBA conference. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs of Universitas 11 Maret. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that you can't wait for the first plenary session, as we're going to have Professor Arifin Angriawan from Purdue University, Northwest, the United States of America, and also Professor Andrea Moro from Cranfield University, the United Kingdom. And to make sure the session runs smoothly, I'd like to introduce you all to our dear moderator, Ibu Dewanti Cahyaningsih. She got her bachelor's degree from Universitas 11 Maret and her master's degree from Université de Limoges, France. And currently, she's pursuing her doctoral degree at the same university, Université de Limoges, France. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Well, Ibu Dewanti interests are in economics, banking, and finance. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present to you Ibu Dewanti Cahyaningsih as our dear moderator.
So very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a big honor for me to be part of this significant event. So once again, welcome for the first international conference on creative economics, business management, and accounting, responding to the post-pandemic signal sustainable business perspective. So this conference held by the UNS Vocational School, and it's such a big honor for me once again to be part of this significant event. So today we will be discussing on the various of perspective on how the academic sees the post-pandemic situation, particularly on the sustainable business perspective. And joining with us today in the UNS, Professor Andrea Moro from Cranfield University, UK. And joining online also, I think it will be nice for us if we could say hello to the three speakers that joining us through the Zoom. We have Professor Erwan Trinugroho from Universitas 11 Maret, Dr. Subhan Abayawansa from Swinburne University, Australia, and last but not least, Professor Arifin Angriawan from Purdue University, of Northwest USA. So very good morning also to all of the speakers who joining online and all of the participants who joining through the Zoom meeting also. And if I'm not mistaken, you can also watch and enjoy this conference to the YouTube channel. So please feel free also, because we will have two sessions. So the first session will be Professor Arifin and also Professor Moro who present the presentation, and after we will have a question and answer session. So feel free for the participant who joining through the Zoom meeting, you can feel free to put your question into the chat box, and I will try to bring the question into the discussion session. And for the participant who joining in this room on site, feel free also, if you have anything to clarify to all of the speakers, just raise your hand into the question and answer session. Without further ado, so let's proceed to the discussion today. The responding to post-pandemic signal sustainable business perspective. So ladies and gentlemen, it's quite hard for us in the last 2-3 years during the pandemic, and we can see no businesses is immune of the effect of the pandemic itself. And today we will discussing how we should respond, particularly in the business area, the area that I think all of us be affected. And the first speaker for today is Professor Angriawan. He's a good friend of the UNS, a professor of strategic management of the University of Norwich, and he teach and conduct research in strategic management, and also he has some select publications, such as some of paper that published in the Journal of Business Research, and then some of article that published in the Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies. So it's really great for me to have opportunity to talk to Professor Arifin. So very good evening, I guess. Professor Ari, can you hear me?
Good evening, Bu Dewanti. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you very much for attending and being a part for this conference, Professor. So the 8 speakers, we will have like 30 to 35 minutes to present the materials, and after we will have the first discussion after Professor Andrea Moro present his material. So Prof. Arifin, it's really good to see you, and I cannot wait to learn much more material from you. So Prof. Ari, please, the platform is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So, Bu Dewa, can you show my my PowerPoint, please?
Yeah, so the committee, would you please to share the PowerPoint of Professor Arifin? Okay. PowerPoint of the Professor Arifin has given to... Okay, so anyway, Professor, I think it's this year you visit Indonesia, but not the UNS, I think. So, ladies and gentlemen, usually Professor Arifin is always visit UNS every time he has time, and after 2 or 3 years of the pandemic, not visiting Indonesia, he visited Indonesia, but unfortunately, like just a short visit, and he was not able to visit UNS. So next time, I think you should visit and have the in-person lecture to us. We're still preparing your material here. So anyway, what you're gonna talk today, Professor?
Yeah, we're going to talk about a sustainable entrepreneurship for 5.0 society. Yeah. So first of all, I'm sorry I couldn't visit you guys during my short break. So I just had a week time in Indonesia, and I was in a couple of cities. That is why I couldn't visit. I think that was the first time I went to Indonesia and didn't have a chance to visit UNS. Can I see the slide, please?
You're right. So once again, thank you very much for providing your valuable time. I'm sure it's quite a little bit late in the US. What time is it now, Professor?
Almost 9.
It's almost 9 p.m. So
yeah, 3 minutes to 9. Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much for staying with us. And anyway, what's about, I mean, like, before we try to proceed your presentation, I think, can you give us like the brief idea about the perspective that you want to share to us?
So there are several key points that I would like to share with the audience today. So number one, the pandemic teach us a very important part about business and society. So I remember I was reading about a 5.0 society or 5.0 industry. And then what I try to do is that to connect sustainable entrepreneurship or sustainable businesses to the 5.0 society. And then I built a pretty big framework, and hopefully I would like to share how we might be able to start some form of sustainable entrepreneurship. And later I identify some of the social or economy issues in Indonesia, and there might be a ways sustainable businesses to help solve some of the problem. So there are the key topics. It's about sustainable entrepreneurship and 5.0 society.
It could be very interesting because what just Professor Arifin mentioned, it's like the perspective of how to build the social and economic in Indonesia. I think it's in line with the agenda of World Economic Forum. Like last time, I think they have like a three different a big point, and one of them is we just not only talking about how to build the sustainable economic itself, but also the societal sides of the building economic, because like Professor Arifin mentioned that during the pandemics, we do learn in a hard way. And now I think it's time for us also to see the complete picture that Professor Ari will taught us today. And Professor Ari, your material is ready. So committee, can you share the screen, please? Perfect. Yes.
Okay.
So please, Professor Ari.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitations. And then thank you for all the participants and audience. And thank you to all the special guests, Professor Moro, Professor Yunus. Industry 5.0 society, I decided to define sustainable entrepreneurship as exploration and exploitation of business opportunities that contribute to the inclusive, human-centered, sustainable organizations, economy, society, and the environment. So we know in the next several years, the world is going to be very, very different. And then some of the keywords that I see what the world would like, number one is going to be digital. It's going to be green. It's going to be inclusive. And then probably all of us, include businesses, are going to behave differently. And probably we are going to become a very altruistic society, the society that care everyone, include the environment. So I believe firms in the future is not always about making profit for shareholders only. So it's going to be more than that. It's going to be for all stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? Human-centered, inclusion, organizations, economy, society, and the environment. So this is some form of sustainable entrepreneurship that I envision is needed by the world for the coming future. Next slide, please. Is it okay we spend, I think this is a short 3 minutes about e-fishery, an Indonesian company that I think is related to sustainable entrepreneurship. Can you share with us the video, please? Thank you.
Yes, please. So the committee, please play the YouTube video.
Nutrisi yang baik untuk ikan adalah salah satu sumber makanan kaya nutrisi yang baik untuk kebutuhan tubuh dan dapat diolah menjadi aneka macam hidangan lezat. Secara umum, kandungan nutrisi dari ikan terdiri atas protein, vitamin-vitamin, dan kalsium yang dibutuhkan untuk metabolisme tubuh. Selain kaya akan kandungan nutrisi, secara ekonomis, proses produksi ikan juga lebih hemat dari segi pemeliharaan bila dibandingkan produk sumber protein lainnya. Secara umum, proses budidaya ikan air tawar dimulai dari menyiapkan kolam budidaya, pemilihan bibit, pemeliharaan, dan panen. Dari proses-proses budidaya ikan air tawar tersebut, proses pemeliharaan merupakan proses yang memakan waktu, tenaga, dan biaya yang paling besar. Sebagian besar proses budidaya ikan masih menggunakan teknologi sederhana yang membutuhkan tenaga yang tidak sedikit. Untuk mencapai efisiensi dalam proses budidaya ikan, teknologi dibutuhkan untuk membantu para peternak menggunakan sumber daya yang dimiliki secara efisien. Untuk menjawab masalah ini, e-fishery hadir sebagai solusi yang menghadirkan teknologi dalam proses budidaya ikan dengan 3 produk unggulan, yaitu e-fishery smart feeder, farm management system, dan fish and fresh. Dimulai dari tahun 2013, e-fishery yang diinisiasi oleh Gibran Huzaifah bersama Krishna Aditya berinovasi dengan mengembangkan e-fishery smart feeder yang merupakan alat pemberi pakan otomatis berbasis aplikasi sehingga dapat memberikan data secara aktual dan juga mempermudah pengelolaan pemberian pakan. E-fishery terus melakukan inovasi dengan mengembangkan farm management system sebagai produk untuk membantu para peternak mengelola kegiatan budidaya ikan menjadi lebih mudah. Dan Fish and Fresh, produk lain dari e-fishery yang menjadi sarana menjual ikan bagi para petani ikan yang dapat langsung diakses oleh konsumen secara langsung melalui internet. Petani dapat memperoleh keuntungan lebih besar dan konsumen dapat menyantap ikan lebih segar langsung dari petani ikan. Keseriusan e-fishery untuk mendukung kemajuan teknologi dalam proses budidaya ikan air tawar kembali ditunjukkan dengan turut berkolaborasi dengan pemerintah, perusahaan-perusahaan lain baik milik swasta maupun negara, serta institusi pendidikan untuk mewujudkan desa inovasi perikanan yang dimulai dari Desa Puntang, Losarang, Indramayu. Dengan membangun ekosistem serba digital yang dimulai dari permodalan, teknologi, pembinaan, pusat pembelajaran, hingga pemasaran, diharapkan dapat meningkatkan kesejahteraan petani serta meningkatnya PDRB daerah dan NTPI. Semua produk dan inovasi yang terus dilakukan e-fishery sampai saat ini merupakan bukti dari komitmen e-fishery untuk terus menciptakan teknologi yang mampu mendorong kesejahteraan petani dan memaksimalkan potensi budidaya ikan air tawar Indonesia.
Okay, so it seems to me that they care about the firm, they care about the business, they care about the farmers, they care about the environment, and then they care about the society. Okay, so I believe this is such one of the type that businesses that we need in the future. It's not all about shareholders, it's not all about the firm, but it's about all stakeholders. And before I discuss the 4.0 society, I would like to flashback a little bit about what happens to the world and why we are here today. Okay, so if you take a look at the first row, we already have gone through the agricultural, industrial revolution, technological revolution, digital revolution, fourth industrial revolution, and some people believe that now we might or have been in the fifth industrial revolution. Okay, so what happens? The first column, one of the key content from the column number 1 is the impact from the industrial changes in society, business and industrial changes. So in the agricultural, maybe 10,000 years ago, human beings were all about hunting. And at the time, we know about settlements and we know about food production. Okay, and then sometime 250 years ago, the first industrial revolution, there was steam engines, railroads, and one of the technological impact was mechanical production. And we started to see the rise of the cities and some of the industries, textile, handicraft, and later at the turn of the 20th century, we start to see the machine power. And then there was electricity, assembly line, roads, light bulb, telephone, and many others. And one of the implication was mass production and urbanization to the city, to urban places. And in many different countries, including in America, we started to see immigrations of people from other countries. Some of the industry, machines, of course, steel, oil, chemicals. And in the 60s, in the 90s, the computer power. Okay, so semiconductors, computers, the internet, and some of the technological changes, mass customization, globalization. And we have computers, we have house appliances, we have the internet. And sometime at the beginning of the 21st century, we know the power of analytics, 3G, 4G, the Internet of Things, and the big data, the analytics, the AI, the cloud computing, and the implication. And this is one of the things that I would like to emphasize. We start to see the smart factories, and then we start to experience the interactions between the digital world, the biology world, and then the physical world. Okay, and in between the digital revolution in the fourth industrial, I think one of the things happen, so many human beings economy activities has brought implications to the environment as well as social problems. Okay, so one of the things that we know, for example, air pollution. Okay, and then you are going to see I identify some of the problems specifically in Indonesia. So that is why now it seems to me in the next maybe 10, 15, 20 years, the world has been slowly migrating to 5.0 society, 5.0 industry, which is it's all about human beings. It's not, as we know, the power of businesses, okay? Businesses are the traditional shareholder primacy businesses, okay? They are just for profit. And then businesses create some problem for society, for the environment. So in the future, sustainable entrepreneurship is about profit, it's about people, it's about planet. Okay, and with this background, let's talk a little bit about sustainable entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. So, Kendai Ren, this is the Kadin, okay, it's a form Japanese Businesses Association. I believe it's similar to Kadin in Indonesia. So in one of their vision, future vision, they identify the idea of 5.0 society. And similarly in Europe, a couple of years ago, a group of people identified the idea of 5.0 industry, which are very similar. Okay, it's all about people, planet, and profit. So 5.0 society. Next slide, please. So when I got the invitation for this particular conference, I started to think the very big picture of sustainable entrepreneurship. So some of the questions that came into my mind was, who could be the stakeholders, how we can encourage innovation, what are the wealth created, and where could be the opportunities of change or of changes. Okay, so for the first column, what I would like to emphasize here is about the stakeholders. So traditionally, especially here in America, or probably in many developed economies, businesses is all about shareholder value creation. So the most important stakeholder is shareholder, the one who owns the firm. All the economic activities are geared toward profit and stock price. Okay, so for me, I think in the future, stakeholders is more than shareholders and more than enterprise. It should include community, it should include NGOs, okay, it should include non-profit. So what I try to share with you for the first column is about it takes more than an organization. It takes more than a firm, a business organization, or the government. It takes more than one of them. In the future, the idea of sustainable entrepreneurship, it takes the effort of all of us, because it is about us. It is about the environment. It's all about us. So I'm envisioning a kind of businesses that are different from the traditional that we see today. So there's a lot of collaboration between different partners. So earlier you see the stakeholders are involved in e-fishery. Okay, I remember they are talking about the pemerintah daerah. Okay, so the stakeholders. And then I was reading this article by Bailey and Lumpkin, and they were talking about how. Okay, so in order to encourage sustainable entrepreneurship, probably first of all, we need to increase the awareness of the needs for change. So what are the changes that we need? I have a slide about that in the coming slide. And then the second one, we are aware what is the problem. We might want to create the desire to participate and support the change. And more than that, we need to have the knowledge. We need to have the ability and reinforcement to sustain the activities. Okay, so these activities might involve the awareness, the desire, the knowledge, the ability might involve more than one stakeholders. Okay, so what I read in the last several years, technology has been developing really fast. So I identify some of the technology like big data, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, robotics, and then this might be the technology that can help us pursue sustainable entrepreneurship. And if you remember earlier, I mentioned about industry or society 5.0. So basically, they are talking about harmony, alignment between the economy, the society, and environment. So you don't want to pursue business that create social or environment problems. Okay, so we are pursuing businesses for better economy, for the society, and for the environment. So this is the envision for the future. Okay, and the next one, the fourth column, I was envisioning, so where might all these opportunities or entrepreneurship takes place? So the first one came into my mind, maybe the product is better, the products or services are better. Maybe we can improve the process. So for example, okay, for example, products, for example, now we have electric cars, okay, processes earlier in the e-fishery. So you see the processes are involved in farming, okay, the production, the marketing, okay, so there is process. And then sometime maybe we can even change the business model and maybe even social, okay, environment, and maybe even sustainable economy. So the opportunities might take place at different objects of development. Okay, it's more than the products, it can go to the whole economy. So at the end, the value created. So traditionally, value is all about shareholder value. It's all about profit. It's about stock prices. Okay, today's we know there is a term called share value. Okay, value for the society, value for the stockholders, or sometimes people say the triple bottom line. Business is for the firm profit, business is for the planet, and for the people. Okay, so this is the framework that I hope it might be able to encourage some form of sustainable entrepreneurship. So I know I'm running out of time, so I have to a little bit faster. Can you go to the next slide, please? So some of the social, environmental, and economic issues that I identify in Indonesia, we have air pollution, water pollution, deforestation, clean energy, climate change, social crimes, poverty, inequalities, education, social polarization. For the economy, maybe human capital, equity and inclusion, corruption, unemployment, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of things that we have to do, and then there are a lot of opportunities for some form of sustainable entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. And then I went further. I took some of the data from Bureau Labor of Statistics, and then this particular slide, I would just simply would like to share with you the three big components of the Indonesian economy. Agriculture, you see one of them is the fisheries. Together with the forestry and agriculture, it's around 14%. And then the two biggest one are services and industrial. So you guys can see some of the economy and the potential sustainable entrepreneurship idea. Next slide, please. According to the data that I have by PPP, the GDP in Indonesia in 2020 is around $3 trillion, okay? So Indonesia is indeed the 7th largest economy in the world. And several constraints that I found, our labor force, the education of our labor force, almost 2/3, okay, is SMP graduate, okay? And then another problems that I found, there was a gap between the graduate skill and the industry needs. So these are some of the potential sustainable entrepreneurship ideas. Next slide, please. Okay, so I don't know, this one takes maybe 4 or 5. Let's just skip this one, okay? I'm running out of time. So this is just for everyone. So maybe think about what needs to be done. How can we solve the problem? And then let's think who stakeholders involved and can solve the problem. Okay, and then maybe we can find some idea that can be implemented. So This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Arifin. Let's have a round of applause for Professor Arifin. He's explaining about the today is followed by more than 100 participants, so I'm expecting a lot of discussion that will be coming. And without further ado, once again, thank you very much, Prof. Ari. And for the second speakers for today, I would humbly invite, he is with us for now, Professor Andrea Moro, Professor of Entrepreneurial Finance and Accounting from University of Cranfield, UK, and previously he taught at University of Leicester School of Management from 2010 to 2014. And prior to joining the academic in 2008, Professor Moro worked for the 15 years as the senior financial advisor for micro and small medium enterprises in consulting firms completely owned by a group of Italian and small local banks. So I think he will explore more about we face the pandemic nationally, because in Indonesia, as same as the others world or a country has, we have what we call as the national program for the economic recoveries. And if I'm not mistaken, you will talk on what the UK or British has done regarding the economic recovery and the business sustainability. So once again, welcome to Solo, Professor. It's really nice to have you in this event. So you have a 30 to 40 minutes to present your presentation. So please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone. The presentation I have.
Yeah, they have your presentation.
Okay. Looks at the topic from a slightly different way, but it links very well with some of the topics that we have just discussed. My intention today is to discuss a little bit about two tools used by the UK government, but I would say all around Europe. The tools similar to these ones have been used by European governments in order to deal with the COVID pandemic. Revise them in order to understand, to derive two conclusions. The first one is to try to understand which tool better fit crisis situation. And secondly, try to understand the logic why this tool, one or the other tool, is the best one in order to address the topic. Now, let's start. Next slide, please. Next, start first and foremost to introducing the two most common tools used by European governments in order to deal with the pandemic. There were two tools. The first one, the first approach by the government was to pour money into the system. So address the issue from the pure financial point of view. The logic is, let's help firms. Let's be sure that the firms will not go bankrupt rapidly because they do not have funds, they do not have money to cover the running costs. So the logic was, let's give simplified access to finance to firms. In the case of the UK, this was done by using what was called a BBLS, Bouncing Back Loan Scheme. It was a loan scheme where firms were allowed to take out loans from banks up to £50,000, loans that were guaranteed by the UK government. So the logic was for the banks, I don't care about any assessment of the quality of the customer. I can give the customer the loan because if the customer survives pandemic, well, it's not a problem. It will be able to repay the loan. But if the customers fails or do not survive, is not able to survive the pandemic, it's not a problem. I will knock on the door of the UK government and the UK government will reimburse me the money that I lent previously to the firm. And the money poured into the system through this way was in between 2020 2021 around 46.6 billion pounds. The second tool used widely all around Europe was a tool mainly focused on protecting jobs. The logic here was try to support firms so that firms will not fire people. The UK scheme was called the CJRS, Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, and was a very simple scheme, already popular all around Europe, where firms were told, you retain your employees, but at the same time, and if you do not have the money, no problem. We will pay for the employees, giving you some grants, in order to simplify the reasoning. The money poured into the system through this way was around 70 billion pounds. Just to give you an idea of the impact on the UK economy, the two schemes jointly represented around 10% of the UK annual government budget. And if you add together 46 and 69, you are in the region of 100 something. Keep in mind that 230 billion is what the UK government spends for the NHS, the National Health System. That is the biggest, one of the, together with the social support, the biggest chunk of the UK government money spent to support people. So the question is, okay, we have these schemes widely used, but was this money well spent? And in order to explore, we have to verify the impact that these two tools had in supporting the economy, supporting the firms. Let's start with the financial side of the story, the BBLS. There is a research that I did jointly with the two colleagues that looks at the effect of this scheme on a sample of around 5,000 UK firms. And what we discovered during this research was quite concerning, I would say, in the sense that at the end of the day, putting money into the system apparently was more beneficial for those firms that were the weakest one before the pandemic, without providing a real support to those firms that were already quite solid before the pandemic. The logic of the scheme was, let's help firms to go through this very tough period so that they will be able to bounce back rapidly soon after. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, sorry, I was. Bouncing, and this is the logic, the very same name of the tool, I mean, bouncing back loan scheme. But what the scheme at the end of the day generated was simply to increase the cash the firm had in their banks at the beginning, so that the banks were typically increased dramatically the amount of cash in the bank, allowing firms to survive. But at the end of the day, the extension in terms of life expectancy for the firm before the firm ran out of cash was more beneficial for those firms that used to have very little cash in the bank, more than those firms that were more solid. And without having any real effect on the capability of the firm to survive in terms of profitability and capability of the firm to generate cash. These can be easily spotted if you look at the graphs by seeing that how at the end of the day the earnings before interest, tax and depreciation and amortization were at the end of the day squeezed because of the tool by simply moving those firms the EBITDA on the left hand side, so of firms that were poor performers, slightly on the right hand side. But the more intriguing is the second graph, where you can see how, at the end of the day, the length of the amount of cash and the expected length of survival of firms increased dramatically, with firms that were with a very short expected life, between up to 30 days of cash in the bank, that decreased by more than 2/3. So apparently, if we look at this way, the logic was this tool seems to be more and kind of a short survival tool. Next slide, please.
Next, please.
The more short-term survival tool than a bouncing back tool, something that allows the firms to next slide, please.
Next slide.
Thank you. Something that allows firms to be in a strong position to relaunch their activities after the financial crisis. So there is it was a kind of a finance where there is, from the firm, particularly from the firm that was in crisis, there was no real stimulus and benefit in repaying back the loan, and a tool that, broadly speaking, was more supportive towards the zombie firms. It means those firms that were very weak, by acting in two different directions. The first direction was by postponing voluntary liquidation, and the second one, for those that were relatively weak, but avoiding bankruptcy in the 2020-21 period, but simply postponing it in the following years. So, in other words, the scheme was not very helpful, apparently, in navigating COVID and help firms to bounce back. And the logic, the major issue that we identify in this tool and in similar tools used around the world is that there was no real screening by the providers of funds in order to understand whether the firm had merit in, there was some merit in the loan provided in the firm that was receiving the role. In other words, tools like this stimulate what is called, we academics define a moral hazard. The problem that at the end of the day there could be some kind of misbehavior because there are no real stimulus in behave properly. Let's move now to the second scheme, the scheme designed in order to support employees. There are some interesting evidences, two completely unrelated evidences post-COVID that can help us to interpret the logic, the benefit or the impact of this scheme. In 2022, in the current year, the UK is facing huge issues in terms of lack of staff. Not white collars, but mainly blue collar staff. There are issues with the logistic industry, that is very pervasive all around the UK, with supermarkets that are not able to receive the stuff put on the shelves, with firms that struggle in receiving the material, and so on and so forth. And this is one. And the second industry that faced, partially related industry that faced huge issues with the staff is the air transport industry, where both staff for airplanes, I mean pilots, stewards, hostess, and ground work. Oh, next slide. Yes, sorry, I forgot to call. People who work on the ground, both of them faced, in both cases, there is lack of staff. Intriguingly, these two industries are those industries that didn't exploit widely this scheme, in the sense that both in the logistics and for air transport, what the firms operating in this area during the pandemic, instead of trying to retain the staff with the logic of exploiting the government support, they decided to fire the staff. Intriguingly enough, a good amount of the staff, particularly in the case of logistics, is made by people who are not UK citizens, typically people from Europe, from eastern part of Europe, or from other parts of the world. People that, since they lost the job at the beginning of the pandemic, decided to go back to their home country. There was no point in staying in the UK when you do not have any income. It was definitely better for them to go back to their home country. Where soon after the pandemic, they were able to secure typically the nice jobs there. So that the situation, the post-pandemic situation for those firms that in these two industries that lay off a lot of their staff was they were not able to secure to rehire the staff before. So this is something that already is launching us a first important message. Possibly it is important to help firms during crisis and convince firms to try to retain the staff. The second evidence is from a completely different, unrelated, apparently, area of research. There is research in finance that shows how, at the end of the day, firms are less prone to apply and secure new loans when there is less protection for blue collars. Apparently, it is quite strange. We tend to think in a very capitalistic way that the easier to lay off and hire people, the better for the firm to adjust to different situations. So the easier should be for them to access also finance. Evidence suggests exactly the opposite. Why? Because when you fire someone, or when you have to, and then you have to rehire someone, particularly for the blue collars, you have to retrain them. You face issues in hiring them and retraining them. Additional costs that could be huge. If you look at this component together with the previous component, you can easily spot that at the end of the day, the logic of protecting jobs in a situation of crisis is incredibly important. It allows, it has not only the benefit of clearly avoiding the people end up being at home without money to buy food or to support their family. It is also an important, very important component for firms in order to be sure that they will be able to be in a very strong position to bounce back soon after the financial crisis. Next slide, please. Hold on, I'm moving. Protected jobs prove to be, if we look at from this point of view, a good political solution because it protects the income from families. So in some way, and this was, to be honest, the major reason for governments to implement a scheme like this one, to limit the any increase in the unemployment rate and try to contain any potential related social conflict. At the end of the day, governments are mainly concerned about try to reduce any social conflict, particularly during crisis, by also granting an income to families. To be honest, I'm not a politician, I'm not involved in this, but I think that very few politicians thought to the second important implication of schemes like this one, that is at the end of the day to support the firms so that they are in a very strong position to start again their production soon after the financial crisis, the COVID crisis. So by helping them to retain the workforce, the firms were able to immediately adjust their production capability according to the increase in the demand. And this is particularly, you can spot this particularly when you look at the two industries that were so keen to fire people. because the major problem is the difficulty they faced in order to readjust to the demand. I'm thinking particularly to the air transport industry. There was, during May and June, a lot of discussion in the UK about the fact that airlines were not able to secure the flights that they have scheduled in advance. Just to give you a very personal situation, a flight, I had 3 flights originally booked between the UK and Sweden between May and June that were moved by British Airways because the original flight was cancelled and they rebooked me on another one. And just to tell you something that happened to me yesterday, I have the email in my email box. If you want, I can show it to you. I received another email from British Airways that notified me that a flight that I booked for November to go to Sweden has been, not to return from Sweden to the UK, has been cancelled, and they are suggesting me to rebook alternative flights because of the lack of people. So the difficulty, this is an example of how difficult it is to adjust to a situation where you do not have staff. And this also implies that, but from the practical point of view, from the firm point of view, this is all money that in one way or another the firms are losing. The inability to serve the market as they are expected to serve really is a damage for firms in terms of image, but also in terms of immediate income and cash flow. And I'm not raising here the issue that these firms are now facing and the huge costs in trying to hire and rehire people by dealing with hiring with recruiting agencies, by probably overpaying the fees to recruiting agencies in order to speed up the process of recruiting people, and so on and so forth. So next slide, so I can go to the conclusion part of my presentation. If we look at the issue from at the COVID from this point of view, by looking at the 2 schemes, finance and employees, the finance side of the story, if you want, of the human side of the story, the conclusion we can derive is that there is no point in putting money into the system. By simply pouring a huge amount of additional money in the system, it does not solve the issue. During crisis, what we have to protect, what we have to, in some way, to support is the workforce. Next slide, please. Is the workforce. By helping firms to retain the workforce, we not only we help people to deal with families to go through a crisis, but we are sure that the firms will be in a strong position to bounce back. But looking backwards, we can argue that at the end of the day, the names given to these tools by the UK government were not the wrong names. I mean, the logic of the bounce back scheme was more suitable for the job protection scheme than for the financial scheme. I would say that and this is my conclusion, that at the end of the day, the COVID taught us that money does not solve the problem. What we have to focus on is the human dimension of business. And this links back to to the previous presentation, the importance to keep men and women at the center of the business activity. This applies to small firms. This applies to large firms. Typically, small firms are more capable to keep to put women and men at the center of their activities. But at the same time, small firms typically do not have the resources to properly invest in their human dimension. the role of governments, and not only in terms of crisis, but probably in general terms, in terms of supporting entrepreneurship, supporting firms, small firms, should be in granting financial support or developing tools that allow firms to develop their human resources. This is helping firms to train people, helping firms to invest in improving the skills of the workforce, helping the firms to support the development of the staff. This should be the focus of government, not simply pouring money. For the sake of itself, it doesn't help anything. And I mean, I am a finance person because my background is in entrepreneurial finance. I'm not a HR person. In some way, I'm speaking against my personal interest. But I mean, we have to look at the real facts, not try to hide ourselves around what we like, what we do not like. Finance is not the solution. The human being is the solution.
Thank you very much. Let's have the round of applause for Professor Moro for this morning presentation. Yes. Okay. So now let's proceed to the question. We will have the question and answer our discussion session. I humbly invite all of the participants who are joining through the Zoom meeting and also from the on-site participant. If you may have any question to confirm to Professor Arifin and also Professor Moro, please feel free and I will bring up the question to you. And I think the question will be mine first. It's quite interesting when you brought up the case in the UK and the Europe, Professor, and you say that in your last sentence that the cash is not the answer, but the human being is the center of it. With that sentence, what have been practicing in the UK for now regarding that the cash is not the main answer, but the human being is the main answer?
I think if you discuss with firms, particularly with entrepreneurs, they are very much aware about the core role, the central role of human beings. Yeah. They are very keen to, very passionate about their stuff. But when you move away from firms, from small firms, and you start to have a conversation with local or national government that look at the picture from very, very broadly. In terms of, I mean, just when they have a very general conversation, they in some way recognize the role, the important role of human beings. But when you started to challenge them in terms of how to address the issue, everything boils down to money. They only look, oh, we have to pour more money in the system. Yeah. But without being aware about the fact that probably there is already enough money. The problem is not how much money you pour in the system, is how you use that money. Yeah. So there are plans, there are ways in which the money is spent in order to support firm in trading that are, to be honest, not very doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. By, for example, pushing some type of training that is not useful for firms, yeah. At the expenses of training that is more important for firms. And I see this in the UK where I live. but partially I see this in Sweden, a country where I spent a good amount of my time because I also have a strong collaboration with the university in Sweden. I'm originally from Italy, so I know very well how things work in Italy, and this is a common theme, the fact that everything seems to be mainly, let's put money in the system without designing, spending more time in thinking and designing the right tool, the right approach.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think I would humbly invite Professor Arifin to join to the conversation. So, Prof. Ari, can you hear us? Okay, so the question is related to the answer of Professor Moro also regarding what we learned about the pandemic and the post-pandemic. The answer is not only about the cash, but also how to create or to strengthen the skill of the human being itself. It's not only about the providing them like money, but also providing them the new skill. And from the presentation of Professor Arifin, one of the point regarding the metrics you made, it's about how to bring the new skill for the human being, for the workers, but also we also face that recently we can learn anything from anywhere. You know, a lot of credential comes up. We can learn not only through the formal school, but also from the many channel that we could learn. And what happened in the US, Professor, regarding the, you know, because I want the audience that join in our conference have the different perspective. We experiencing what we have in Indonesia regarding how to solve this kind of problem, and Professor Moro has provided us what happened in the US and Europe, and then I think it's an opportunity for us also to hear what happened in the US regarding the how to manage the humankind and human being regarding the post-COVID-19. So Professor Ari, please.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And frankly speaking, I'm not the expert in this field, okay? So this is just based on my knowledge. So we have some problems in some industries, and one of them is the airline. And then I'm not sure about now, but last year it was a huge logistic problems, and I think it's one of the contributors to the inflations that we have here now. And then another point that I would like to add is about, if you remember in my presentation, there was a slides about the society 5.0 society, where businesses and then the society and the environment goes together. Okay, so from the COVID, what we learned is that the firms that don't care the society, the firms that don't care the humans, they are not resilient. It means that they don't bounce back. So when the COVID is over, their employees are gone too. So it doesn't bounce back, it's not resilient. So one of the things that we learned from sustainable entrepreneurship is about firms need to spend resources and care about all stakeholders, including the customers, not just the shareholders. So think about it. If you have a firm in your area, in your city, who cares about the environment, who cares about the society, who cares about the workforce, I'm pretty sure they are going to be more resilient, more rooted in the environment, supported by the environment, and can bounce back quickly. Not the other way, like what happens to the logistic industry and airport in air transport industry after the COVID. They had problem with the human power. Okay, so that is a really good example how the pandemic teaches us about the importance of resilient economy and how much we care about human and society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ari. And we have the question from the audience that come to me directly. It's from CD from the US. Question is for Professor Arifin Agriawan. And it's short question, but probably it required like a longer time to answer it. So what kind of the SIM that the US government provide to recover the whole economics nationally? So please, Professor.
Okay, unfortunately, I don't know the answers. Okay, but I know that they have similar some support, some loans, but I don't know exactly the amount of money and how does it work. Okay, the places that I go to, a lot of them get the support from the government, and then the people that are unemployed, okay, they also get some paychecks from the government. So I don't know exactly how long, how does it work. And another things that I learned is that as Professor Moro identified earlier, there is a huge amount of support, $1 trillion of support from the government to the people and to the workforce. And I also learned that there is a huge fraud, okay? Some people, they receive the loan, which not supposed to belong to them. Okay, so I can see from to my best of knowledge, okay, I can see that government itself is not going to be able to solve the COVID, in this case, to support the firms and the workers. Does it make sense what I try to say? And then this is exactly, so from the previous presentation, it takes 10% of the annual budget of the US, of the British government. It's a huge amount of money. So this is exactly in one of my frameworks, sustainable entrepreneurship. This type of entrepreneurship for society, for environment, is going to be a collaborative work. It's not just about the enterprises. It's not just about the non-profit. It's not about the government. It's about everyone. That is why I added in the first column, so many stakeholders should involve. So if these things happen again in the future, I think firms to take also a very big role to support their firms and to support the workers, not just expecting support from the government. Government, I'm pretty sure, does not have that much money to support, and how long they can support.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ari. And we also have the question from the audience for you, Professor Moro. It's from Adrian. I think he's curious about what happened and what been the state of the Europe, particularly in the Italy, because you mentioned that you were originally Italian. What is the state of the economic in the Italy after the COVID by now? So please, Professor.
Well, Italy is in a quite peculiar situation. It entered the COVID crisis in a very weak position. Yeah. The Italian economy was, broadly speaking, stagnating for 10, 15 years. It was the first country affected by COVID. Italy ended up with a complete lockdown where everything was literally locked for something like 2 months and a half in 2020. Yeah. And then in 2021, so that the economy was hugely hit. Okay. In 2021, it enjoyed, if you allow me to use this verb, it enjoyed a bounce with quite an astonishing increase in terms of change in the GDP. And this is currently applying also to 2022. But there are two joint forces that are acting here. Clearly, when you move back from an economy that for 3, 4, 5 months was completely frozen back to normal, you have implicitly a huge increase in terms of GDP, change in GDP. The second point is, and this is, okay, pure statistical. There is a second aspect that you have to take into consideration, that the European Union allocated a huge amount of money to support countries in order to recover after the COVID. And Italy, because of the historical position, because of the population it has, because of the role in the world economy, it is one of the 10 biggest economy in the world, received a large chunk of these funds that are, but the benefit currently the Italy can enjoy is not linked to the money it receives, but to the conditions attached to the money. One of the major issues in Italy, and I would like to extend this, Italy is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a problem quite broad all around Europe, is bureaucracy. So the fact that there is a lot of red tapes in what we have to do, and particularly for firms. One of the conditions in order to access these fundings is linked to redesign the way in which the Italian public administration is run, so to cut down the red tape. And the real benefit, probably on the 5-10 years time, will be not linked to the money received by Italy, but because of the improvement in the way in which people can do business in Italy. We have a say in Italy. I mean, we typically, when you launch a business, when you want to do something, you have your plan A. But in Italy, immediately, anyone develop also plan B, C, D, and the entire spectrum, or the entire alphabet. And the only thing that you can be sure is that the plan A will not work. You probably some of the other plans will work, maybe, but you can be sure that your original plan will not work because of the complexity of the bureaucracy, of the Italian bureaucracy, the red tape, and so on and so forth. If Italy, and I would say in general Europe, can simplify this aspect, this could be clearly a good push. Something kind of a positive outcome from something that no one liked, and it was COVID, mainly because of the huge impact on humanity in terms of deaths and in terms also of the economy. But I mean, something even from the worst solution, from the worst context, something good can come up. And hopefully this could be something that can help, not just Europe or Italy or Europe, but the entire world to improve.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Moro. And I think I will give you the opportunity for the audience here. If you may have the question, please raise your hand and the committee will hand the microphone to you. So is there any question? Yes, please. So the committee, can you proceed to have the microphone to, okay, you have it already. So please, your name and also the question. Would you please stand up, please, so we can see you.
Okay, so my name is Nasma, and this question is for Prof. Arifin. How pandemic will impact the business opportunities this day?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Prof. Arifin, can you hear me? So you have the live question from the audience here who joining us in the room. The question is from Nashwa, and the question is about how the pandemic affect doing the business. Is that the question? Yes.
Okay, thank you, Budewa. Thank you, Mbak Nashwa. I'm pretty sure, okay, there are many lessons that we learned from the pandemic. So I think one of the biggest one that I learned, I shared with you earlier, the sustainable entrepreneurship and the view of stakeholder economy in the future. And then, of course, we have seen so many changes in our life in the last 3 years. Okay, so one of the closest to us, we see I think for my first time, maybe I believe we were on Zoom, education on Zoom for the full year, spring and fall 2020, I believe, okay? So we see how much impact from the COVID on businesses. And earlier, some of the example, we still have the impact until today. The logistic industry mentioned earlier, the air transport mentioned earlier. So, and then another things that I learned is about how businesses respond to COVID. Okay, so the first lesson is that we use a lot of technology, and here in America, I saw so many firms are really fast reacting to the business to the situation and grab the opportunities. So some of the firms, for example, Amazon, Walmart, they are doing pretty well during the COVID because of their e-commerce. And many other firms, they invented something called the curbside pickup. It's like a drive-through. So you order online, and then you go, you pick up your stuff, and then you drive. You don't even need to step down to the shop. So these are some of the reasons, the change, the response, and some of the things that we learn. Okay, and I'm pretty sure it's going to happen again. And at the time, hopefully, we are going to be ready. We are going to be much more ready. And then another point that I would like to point that out, if these things happen again, I think one of the solutions or response should be not just from the government, but it's going to be a collaboration between many different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Arifin. And if you may please, I think the question is also will be yours also regarding the question of Mrs. Naswa, how the pandemic will affect the business this day, Professor, from your perspective.
Well, do you have a second question? It's quite tough. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what will happen. It is very difficult to understand. There are so many forces there. It is easier for me to reply to a slightly different question. Is what kind of world I would like to see after the pandemic? Okay. That is slightly different, but I just to go back to a common theme that emerged during the conversation today. I like to. I hope that through the pandemic, entrepreneurs, managers, rule makers, governments will put women and men at the center again. And by women and men, it means if we look at these things from the firm point of view, put stakeholders at the center of the stage, not the shareholders. Not everything should be about money. Stakeholders are employees, stakeholders are customers, stakeholders are suppliers. Be sure that we develop an ecosystem where at the end of the day, relationship among players are important. Where we exploited technology positively. I mean, the pandemic pushed incredibly the use of technology, Zoom, Teams, all these meetings. And to be honest, they are very useful. In some way, they had a huge impact, even in terms of reducing the environmental impact. I mean, there were these nice pictures during in 2020 of these where we're showing the reduction in the CO2 emission in large cities because people was locked at home. But at the same time, we have to take into consideration that we like human interaction. I mean, it is nice to have the possibility to easily address, to have a chat with friends on the other side of the Atlantic or the other side of the Pacific easily. But at the same time, it is also important to meet people. Maybe this is my Italian dimension, the Mediterranean dimension. We love to have a contact, physical contact with people. But I think it is important. I mean, for 2 years, I ended up teaching to my students on Zoom. It was kind of a nightmare. I mean, not having the possibility to look at the faces of the students in front of me, how they react to my teaching, and implicitly adjust, you know, to my teaching according to whether they were started sleeping or whether they were enthusiastic about what I was telling them. So this is something that clearly, hopefully, will be recovered from now on, going back to normal. But I mean, this human dimension and the proper use of technology is something we have to try to exploit in order to build up a better society in the future.
Thank you very much.
Quite trivial. I mean, this is my dream.
But that's your point of view, and it's kind of an interesting point of view. Anyway, I think that was the end of the first plenarization session, and we will have like the second plenarization after 10-minute breaks, I think. And I would like also to remind all of the participants who joined via Zoom meeting that the committee told me the attendance list will be given by the end of the second plenarization. I will give back to Mr. Albert, FDMC, so please.
All right, thank you. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, right now we're going to move on to the next one. We're going to have a handover of token of appreciations. So we kindly invite the Dean of the Vocational School of Universitas 11 Maret, Bapak Santoso Trihananto, together with the Vice Dean, Bapak Agus, to come on stage, and we're going to give token appreciation to Professor Moro. So maybe we can do it here or right. Okay, Professor Moro, please kindly, we're going to have a token of appreciation handover. I think it's better in here. Okay, right. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, let's give big round of applause for Professor Moro and also our dear moderator also. Okay. So a souvenir from Solo City at this beautiful occasion. Right, you can have a look at the camera. We're going to take a picture. Okay, hold it, smile, smile. Ladies and gentlemen, again, big round of applause for all of us here. Thank you. Right, thank you. Please be seated. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a break first. Okay, and we kindly, for the hybrid participant, please kindly enjoy the coffee break, and we're going to go back here for the next plenary session at 10:30. So we give you like 5 minutes if you want to, you know, go to the restroom, enjoy the coffee break, and we're going to start the plenary session, the second plenary session in 5 minutes. Okay, we'll be back.
Science without nobility is blind. The core of Universitas 11 Maret logo, which is a head-like shape with a flame in its center, is described as Wiku. The term Wiku is Old Javanese, borrowed from Pali, meaning an educated noble disciple. The flame, or prabha, in the center of Wiku's head represents the brilliance, wisdom, and nobility of the human mind. The flame also symbolizes the light of knowledge that shines and makes a positive and eternal impact on the world and humanity. Universitas 11 Maret, established on March 11, 1976, is one of the leading universities in Indonesia. Its noble goal is to contribute to the development of the nation through education, research, and innovation that benefits society. Universitas 11 Maret has built its vision and strategic plan on becoming an internationally excellent center of development of science, technology, and arts based on the noble values of national culture, focusing on enhancing its specialized subject areas and on developing its capacity to meet world-class standards. Universitas 11 Maret has established 3 centers of excellence in science and technology. The 3 centers are Center of Excellence in Lithium-Ion Battery Technology, Center of Excellence in FinTech, Financial Technology, and Center of Excellence in Javanology that focuses on the study, development, and preservation of Javanese culture. Universitas 11 Maret is located in the city of Surakarta, also known as Solo. Solo is a very comfortable city to live in, where Javanese culture and modern life combine. The life in Solo, which upholds the value of harmony, has prepared Universitas 11 Maret graduates to be future leaders who are tough, creative, friendly, generous, calm, and adaptive. To achieve the vision of Indonesian higher education, freedom to learn, independent campus, Universitas 11 Maret offers a variety of courses on a wide range of subjects. Various library services, such as thousands of print books and ebooks, access to various international journals, and academic librarian assistants are available to support the teaching and learning process and promote the academic achievement of all students, lecturers, and researchers. With a comfortable learning environment, a green campus, and supported by an integrated information system, Universitas 11 Maret has an academic culture that fosters a global perspective and is prepared for Education 4.0. Active and strong international partnerships and collaborations have become an integral part of the university. International partnerships provide opportunities for student and staff mobility, as well as collaborative research and community service projects. In addition to being a center of excellence, Universitas 11 Maret is home to students from all 34 provinces in Indonesia and 33 countries in the world. This creates a multicultural environment that promotes mutual understanding. Embracing diversity and respecting all cultures makes every student feel recognized and valued. The complexity of the modern world is continuously increasing. We live in an uncertain world where change is rapid and unpredictable. Universities have a pivotal role to play in preparing graduates for jobs that don't exist yet, for technologies that haven't been invented, and for problems that need innovative solutions.
Universitas 11 Maret has three main agendas toward a world-class university. Acceleration in various fields of development is needed by embracing the foundation of UNS Benteng Pancasila. Therefore, 5 strategic policy pillars were decided.
It is important to understand that flexibility and adaptability are the keys to growth in the rapidly changing 21st century. This is what encouraged Universitas 11 Maret to shift its governance and management to an autonomous public university. With this change, Universitas 11 Maret will have the autonomy and independence to improve the quality of teaching, learning, and research in implementing the 5 development pillars of Universitas 11 Maret to accelerate its transformation process towards becoming a world-class university. Universitas 11 Maret.
second session of the plenary session. So for the first plenary session, we had Professor Arifin Anggriawan and also Professor Andrea Moro, and also we have the question and answer. And right now we're going to move on to the next plenary session. There will be Associate Professor Subhash Abayawansa from Swinburne University, Australia, and also Professor Irwan Trinugroho from Universitas 11. Before, I would like to give an information for all the presenters and all the participants. The certificate of this conference will be delivered to you by email 1 week after today. Okay, and the publication on the paper that we promised, that will be informed also 3 weeks after this event. So once again, certificate 1 week and publication 3 weeks after today. All right, so without further ado, we still have our dear moderator, the same moderator, okay? And Ibu Dewanti, should I call you Ibu because you're still very super young actually?
Just call me Dewa.
Dewa.
Yeah.
Okay, although Dewa is actually, we usually refer to male. Maybe I can call you Dewi, maybe it's different?
The funny thing is Dewi is my sister.
Okay, okay, okay,
So
that's quite interesting, right? So I'll call you Dewa, yeah?
Yes.
All right, so Dewa, the floor is yours right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albert. Well, let's proceed to the second plenary session. We will have the two remaining speakers, two interesting speakers that are joining us through the Zoom. So I think I would greet first the Dr. Subha Abayawansa. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Like it's good to hear your voice, and I really hope we can see your face. So probably you can turn your camera of your laptop, and perform. We will join later. So the sequence is still the same. So we will have the speakers presenting their. We'll have the question and answer session after the Professor Irwan presenting his material. And again, you can directly type in your chat box for the participant who joining through Zoom, and for the participant who joining on site, feel free to raise your hand into the question and answer session. So without further ado, very good afternoon, I guess, Dr. Subhash Abayawansa. Before Associate Professor Subha Abayawansa proceed to his material, I would give you a brief introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Subha Abayawansa is the Associate Professor of Accounting and Finance at the Swinburne University Technology, Australia, and he taught some courses in the bachelor, master, and doctoral programs, and won multiple awards for his teaching innovation. So we are expecting that he will provide us quite a different and yet interesting way of teaching, I guess. And he earned his doctoral in accounting at the University of Sydney and hold the MBA from Deakin University and Bachelor of Science also in the same university. And he was awarded as a gold medal for the best academic performance. Wow. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Associate Professor Subha Abayawansa. So please, Dr. Abayawansa.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my face. You can see my screen.
Apparently no. So probably you can.
I have turned on my camera.
Yes. Please turn your camera on so we can see you.
I have turned it on. You should be able to see me.
So can the committee spotlight Dr. Subha? Yes, now it's perfect.
All right, awesome. Shall I start sharing my slides?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think I am able to do that. I don't have the rights to share my screen.
You have the, so can you the committee to give the access for Dr. Subba Abeyawansa to share his screen? I think it will be work now. They already set you as the co-host.
Yes.
Okay.
You can see my slides now?
Now it's perfect. Yes, post-pandemic recovery focusing on
but overnight we were experiencing about 4 degrees. So it's very nice now at the moment. So firstly, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to talk to you today. The main focus of my talk today is why and how businesses should operate sustainably to create value in the post-pandemic recovery period. So my background, as you know, from the introduction you heard, is accounting and finance. So my talk will inevitably have an accounting flavor to it. Also, I'm going to draw a lot on the research I have done with my colleagues in my talk today. Most of my research examines sustainability and sustainability reporting. So you would see me drawing a lot on that research today in this talk. So the need for businesses to operate sustainably has always been there. In 1987, the United Nations Brundtland Commission defined the term sustainable development. I'm sure most of us are aware of this definition. As you can see from this slide, it was defined, or sustainable development was defined as meeting the needs of the present generations to meet their own needs. The intention of developing this definition was to promote a model of economic development that did not negatively affect our planet's capacity to sustain future generations. The focus placed on sustainable development also created an imperative on companies to operate sustainably. Customers, suppliers, employees, investors, and other stakeholders expect companies to operate more responsibly towards the society and environment. We see this happening, and we see this intensifying as well. At the start of the sustainability movement, the main emphasis of companies was on making profits, but doing so in a manner that minimized their social and environmental impacts. Rob Gray, who is a highly respected researcher in sustainability accounting research, who unfortunately passed away not too long ago, explained this approach to sustainability as business as almost usual approach. So I highlight the word almost here. So you can see this on the left-hand side of your screen. In contrast to this, in the business as usual approach, which is on the other side of the screen, companies did not acknowledge any social and environmental responsibility. So in this approach, value creation is conceptualized as organizations pursuing profits or maximizing shareholder value, and social responsibility was simply considered to be maximizing shareholder value. So if an organization was maximizing shareholder value, it was considered to be socially responsibly as well. This is the relationship between sustainability and value creation the famous American economist and Nobel laureate Milton Friedman saw as, right? I'm sure most of you might have read his work or heard his speeches. In contrast, in the business as almost usual approach, businesses try to reduce their negative impacts as long as there is a business case for doing so. So in contrast to the business as usual perspective, in the business as almost usual perspective, businesses were trying to reduce their negative impacts, but only if that made sense for the business from a profitability standpoint as well. Concepts such as eco-efficiency started to become popular in the 1980s and 90s as companies tried to be environmentally responsible. So eco-efficiency is basically a management strategy for doing more with less resources. That is creating more goods and services while using fewer resources and creating less waste and pollution. So it was good for the environment, good for business as well. So it really means being less bad, right? So the focus is being less bad, not really good, as businesses were trying to fully curtail their negative externalities. The business mindset has been and still predominantly is profit first and sustainability second. In other words, for businesses to initiate product, process, or other changes that reduced social and environmental impacts, there had to be a business case. If sustainability-related initiatives could impact businesses' bottom line negatively, that is, if their cost is higher than the financial benefits derived from them, then it was unlikely to be an appetite, or there was, there would not be an appetite for such initiatives, regardless of the benefits those initiatives would create for the environment and society. So in summary, corporate sustainability initiatives traditionally sought to enhance or at least not diminish shareholder value. Now let's talk about sustainability-related impacts. Sustainability impacts can be categorized into two groups. So you can see on the top, you have the financial materiality, and second, you have environmental and social materiality, and then we combine both together in double materiality. I will explain what these are. The first group include impact, the impacts organizations have. It includes the impacts of the environment and society on business operations. As we know, environmental impacts such as those caused by climate change and biodiversity loss can have significant consequences on businesses. For example, climate change creates physical risks to businesses such as disruptions to operations caused by droughts, floods, increase in sea level, or extreme weather events. Similarly, businesses face regulatory risks associated with climate change too. These risks relate to businesses' cost increasing due to things like taxes on carbon emissions, regulations requiring businesses to adopt less energy-intensive technologies or to reduce emissions. Then there are transition risks of climate change. As we know, customers' preferences are shifting towards products that are more environmentally friendly now. These changes in the marketplace poses risks to companies. If businesses do not change their products, processes, or technologies in line with the demands of the market, they then run the risk of losing market share, and customers could boycott their products in extreme cases as well. These examples are all related to climate change, right? So I spoke about three types of risks: physical risks, the regulatory risks, and the transition risks that climate change creates to businesses. So this is how the environment affects businesses. However, we all know how businesses are impacted by the pandemic and the types of risk businesses face during the pandemic. Now, they are more social risks rather than environmental risks. If companies do not manage these risks adequately, then their profitability will be affected, the value of their company will decline. This is a no-brainer. These types of impacts are called financially material impacts because they affect the enterprise value of an organization. The second category, or the second image you see on this slide, relates to impacts which are called environmental and social impacts. They include businesses' impacts on the society and environment. how the businesses affect society and environment. Examples of these types of impacts include things such as greenhouse gas emissions, the impacts businesses have on local communities, how businesses are development goals. We talk about sustainable development goals these days. This type of sustainability related impact is not very important to investors, and they are mainly relevant to other stakeholders who are concerned about the sustainability of the planet. However, we have heard many times and seen many examples of businesses' negative impacts on society and environment coming back to bite them. The businesses might not have broken any laws in relation to their environmental and social impacts, but still their value can be impacted by them. I will provide an example that you might be familiar with. The example I like to quote here is Nike. Some of you might remember Nike's factory practices in Indonesia. In 1991, Nike was running sweatshops in Indonesia. The company was paying below minimum wages, employing child labor, providing appalling conditions for employees who were working in these factories. Now, this is just an example I picked, which is an old example. I use that because it's Indonesian based, but there are many examples that happen even today, which talks about these kind of things. After these revelations, Nike suffered significant financial and regulatory consequences. Many organizations still ignore the long-term consequences of their impacts. Now, Nike learned their lesson the hard way. Still, companies think long-term impacts are not important to investors and for the value of businesses. A good example is climate change. In most countries, there are no laws requiring companies to reduce emissions, although in developed countries, these laws are getting introduced. Also, most developing countries don't even provide incentives for companies to reduce emissions. Hence, businesses in those countries do not think it is important to reduce emissions, as they do not bear the costs of climate change directly, right? So the key word there is directly. I explained earlier that businesses are already seeing the impacts of climate change. For example, many small island nations in the Pacific are facing the risks of flooding due to the rising sea levels. Businesses such as hotels and tourism operators in those countries are likely to suffer the consequences of this. However, the sad realization is that many of those businesses do not really think that they need to reduce their emissions because any change that they do will not be sufficient to reverse climate change. Because of this type of thinking, most social and environmental impacts are not considered to be financially material. My argument is for businesses to make profits, there should be a planet left. In other words, no one can make profits on a dead planet. What I'm arguing is that we as humans act in our own ultimate self-interest. So what is our self-interest? Our self-interest is the survival of the human race. We all want to ensure our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren have good lives. To do that, we need to ensure that we leave this planet at least in the same state that it was when we came on it. To achieve this, businesses have to think long-term and beyond creating value for investors. So this is the crux of my speech today, the importance of businesses thinking long-term and beyond creating value for investors. The United Nations offered a solution for this and an incentive for companies to think long-term and beyond shareholder value maximization. In 2015, the United Nations General Assembly introduced 17 global goals, which most of us call Sustainable Development Goals, or I'll use SDGs in short. These goals provide a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for everyone. They address the global challenges we face, including poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. All these goals are for governments to act upon. They cannot be achieved, however, without private sector support. former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called businesses to contribute to SDGs through their core activities and assess their impact, set ambitious goals, and communicate transparently about the results. The need for businesses to contribute to the achievements of SDGs is great because business sector has a big impact on global economy. I'll just give you some perspective. A report published by the global consulting firm McKinsey & Company in May 2021 showed that business sector overall contributes to 72% of GDP in OECD countries. There are many companies that have revenues greater than the GDPs of some countries. So for example, if Apple was a country, then it would be the 47th biggest country in the world in terms of GDP. So you can understand the impact companies and businesses have on this planet. So the Business and Sustainable Development Commission published a report in 2017 claiming that pursuing SDGs through sustainable and inclusive business models would open up $12 trillion of economic opportunities by 2030. So you can see this enable businesses to look at sustainability in a different light. That is to think about them as opportunities. Again, it makes business sense. So there is a business case here because by engaging with SDGs, companies are able to make profits as well because they can leverage these opportunities. Research published by the Big Four accounting firms and global consulting companies showed that immediately after the introduction of the SDGs, businesses showed a greater enthusiasm to engage with these goals. So this enthusiasm is there. Businesses want to engage with them. Many saw the SDGs as opportunities to rethink approaches to sustainable value creation and contribute to sustainable development through their core business. Therefore, with the advent of the SDGs in 2015, we see the rhetoric changing from expecting businesses to mitigate their negative social and environmental impacts to positively contributing to a sustainable development. However, businesses thinking about sustainability from a business as almost usual point of view has not changed much since 2015, unfortunately. There's some skepticism about businesses' intentions to embrace SDGs. This skepticism stems from the difficulty comprehending organizations responsible for unsustainable development in the first place and were driven to maximize shareholder value can now become champions of the SDGs. So it's sort of too good to be true. Hence, there's a tendency to label business activities aligned with SDGs as rainbow washing. Now, rainbow washing is a term that is used to indicate businesses using colorful SDG logos in their reports without corresponding meaningful action on those SDGs. The COVID-19 pandemic taught us many things. Most important lesson, I think, is the importance of sustainable development. The pandemic highlighted that people, planet, and profits are interconnected and interdependent. It showed us the close relationship between health, poverty, climate change, and the stability of the global financial system. In other words, the pandemic revealed the weaknesses in the financial system in terms of fragility of supply chains, labor markets, credit quality, liquidity, and their impacts on socio-economic prosperity. Until the pandemic, businesses' efforts around sustainability have mainly focused on their environmental impacts. In particular, how their operations are contributing to climate change and what they can do to minimize that impact was the main concern and the main consideration for most businesses before the pandemic. In particular, how their operations can contribute to climate change and what they can do to minimize that impact. The pandemic helped put the social dimension of sustainability in the spotlight, while also providing a environmental. If a pandemic can have such a dividing on people, businesses and economics and nations in the world, then what chaos is climate change and other sustainable development issues such as biodiversity loss, for instance, are capable of creating? The 2019 Global Sustainable Development Report highlighted that many countries were not on track to achieving the SDGs back in the 2019. This report called for more substantial and accelerated action to bring about the transformative changes necessary to achieve the Agenda 2030. The pandemic set us back from where we were in 2019. So you can imagine where we are now in terms of the progress towards achieving the SDGs. The official response by the United Nations to the pandemic highlighted that if we had been investing in the SDGs throughout the pandemic, then we would have had a better foundation for withstanding the shocks created by the pandemic. Now, combating climate change, embracing circular economy, protecting biodiversity, etc., are particularly important aspects of a post-pandemic recovery plan. However, these cannot be addressed in isolation because all SDGs are related. There are other business reasons for businesses to engage with SDGs. There is evidence that businesses' efforts in transparent about sustainability performance during the pandemic have paid off. So on this slide, I have provided some points that how businesses were doing during the pandemic and how they were affected, especially those businesses that were socially and environmentally sustainable. So research shows that environmentally responsible businesses were less exposed to systemic risks, such as those created by the pandemic. Now, during the pandemic, there was also a growing interest from investors to invest in companies that were more sustainable. For example, flow of funds to social responsible investment funds reached new heights during the pandemic. We also saw better stock returns and low volatility for more sustainable companies compared to less sustainable ones. Surveys have found, especially the pension schemes were making changes in their approaches to sustainable investing as a result of the pandemic. Moreover, the pandemic saw social responsible investing becoming mainstream. The growth in the focus of environmental, social, and governance factors, or in academic literature, we use the term ESG for this. The growth in ESG factors is also seen in your region, the Asia-Pacific region. A PwC report published in December last year reported that 79% of investors in the Asia-Pacific region increased their ESG-related investments during the pandemic. The report states that in Indonesia, a leading cause of this shift is the pressure applied from foreign investors. So coinciding with the growth in social responsible investing, a new industry has also been created for providing the data, ratings, rankings, etc., related to companies' environmental, social, and governance activities. So this new industry is helping investors decide which companies have better sustainability performance and therefore good investment opportunities. The bottom line is that investors prefer companies that are managing their sustainability risks and making positive contributions to sustainable development. However, there is a big danger that businesses which have been battered by the pandemic-induced financial crisis might deprioritize costly and environmentally sustainable policies and initiatives. Now, some research already shows that this has happened. But there are companies that have done the opposite. They have increased their emphasis on socially and environmentally friendly activities and initiatives that they do. So such a mindset, a mindset of business survival and putting sustainability activities in the backseat can undermine planetary survival. Now let's look at how businesses engage with SDGs. Businesses' approach to engaging with sustainable development goals and integrating SDGs in strategy, management approach, decision-making, and governance oversight varies considerably from company to company. I have done some collaborative research to understand how businesses are managed and governed to enable achievement of these SDGs. In one of my research studies, we found that even the multinational companies that are considered to be leaders in engaging with the SDGs have a long way to go before they can make meaningful contributions to the SDGs. I have heard from many chief sustainability officers of large corporations that include the colorful SDG logos on their sustainability reports, that they simply map the SDGs to what they have already been doing, but SDGs are not driving real change. This is exactly what a study conducted by the RMIT University on top Australian listed companies found as well. According to their study, only 11 companies out of 150 companies they examined, the messages from the chairperson or the CEO published in those annual reports referred to the SDGs. Moreover, a 2019 report from the United Nations Global Compact and Accenture Strategy shows that CEOs of many companies that took action on the SDGs did not really appreciate how such actions lead to value creation for stakeholders and shareholders. These companies are simply responding to stakeholder and investor demand without appreciating the link between sustainability, sustainable development risks, and value creation. These research findings makes us skeptical about whether businesses are really committed to SDGs, although they seem to be. Making a positive contribution to the SDGs is having a corporate strategy that is driven by a commitment to making such a contribution. So our research indicates that businesses are not doing enough to integrate sustainable development risks. My research shows that companies that are most susceptible to climate change and pandemic-related risks adopted a very short-term time horizon when making sense of these risks. Management guru Peter Drucker, I'm sure most of you have heard of him or are aware of him, once said, "What gets measured gets managed." So in order to manage sustainability impacts within businesses, they need to get measured. Accounting research shows that the sustainability impacts that get measured within business is heavily influenced by what sustainability related information they are expected to disclose. External incentives for and pressure on businesses to disclose how they are operating sustainably drive what they measure and help them be more sustainable. The discussion takes us to the topic of disclosure of sustainability-related information by companies and current regulations. So during the pandemic, we saw governments around the world taking various actions and implementing regulations to mitigate climate change. One of them is making disclosure of climate-related information, especially by large listed companies, mandatory. I see this as a start of an era of mandatory sustainability reporting. So countries like the UK and New Zealand, they were pioneers, having already enacted legislation enabling mandatory climate change-related risk disclosure. So the bottom line is that there are both regulatory and stakeholder pressure for companies to become more sustainable and pursue the SDGs. I believe that businesses' value creation efforts should be more broadly defined in the post-pandemic world. As I highlighted previously, we have had first-hand experience of the dangers of short-sighted business thinking. Examples include the global financial crisis that occurred in the first decade of this millennium and the economic crisis caused by the pandemic more recently. We all saw the devastating impacts those crises have on us. For the sake of our planet's survival, it is important for businesses to focus on creating value not only for themselves and their investors, but also for the environment and society. However, creation of value for investors should not be prioritized over creating value for environment and society. We know that creating value for the enterprise and investors is about making business profits by operating in a socially and environmentally responsible manner. So then, what is meant by creating value for the environment and society? I would say that this is about businesses trying to contribute to the SDGs. That businesses should go beyond avoiding social and environmental harm, which companies have been doing so far, and quite successful in most cases, make a positive contribution. There are many examples of businesses engaging in philanthropic activities like sponsoring various initiatives, helping schools, helping hospitals. In most cases, those positive contributions of businesses are not part of their corporate strategy. They are just activities undertaken on the side. This is not proper contribution to the SDGs. The objectives of funding those activities is to create favorable perception about the company and strategically manipulating the public sentiment about the company. A true focus on creating value for the enterprise, society, and the environment requires sustainability strategy to be integrated with corporate strategy. It requires a change in the interpretive scheme of an organization. That is how the organizational members see the organization and its purpose. We hear the word corporate purpose being thrown around these days. So we need a proper corporate purpose. So investors that take a long-term perspective understand and rebound effects of sustainability that I spoke about earlier, that the impacts that companies make on the society and environment can in turn impact the company as well. So these investors will support organizations to create value more holistically for the environment and society when they understand this. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. What I tried to do today was to explain why sustainability and sustainable development should be at the core of the post-pandemic recovery. I also explained that, or basically what businesses are currently doing and what they should do to contribute to the achievement of the SDGs. I hope the research I presented and the arguments I made today help you think more holistically about the business's role in the post-pandemic recovery. So my objective was to help you think a little bit differently and maybe take that forward to help the nation and businesses make a positive contribution. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abayawan. Such a short but short yet the comprehensive explanation on the topic that you just presented on how we see as the businesses to do some sifting or the changes how we see the business in general, not only focusing on how the creating a value of the business itself, but also to provide the social impact. That's why Dr. Abayawan also presenting us about the business almost a usual perspective. And thank you very much, Dr. Abayawan. We will have the question and answer session, but after the last but not least speakers. So today we have Professor Irwan Trinugroho from Universitas 11 Maret. He has the PhD from University of Limoges, France, and he holds some significant roles in Universitas 11 Maret, such as the chairman of the Center for Fintech and Banking, and also the director of the Partnership, Development, and International of Universitas 11 Maret. He also holds some significant role outside the university as the expert for FIBA, Foundation for International Business Administration Accreditation, and also some of the tasks as the assessor in the international level. He also holds some academic honors, such as awardee in 2020 as world-class professor program for the Minister of Education and Cultures, and he published numerous of publication in most reputable journals. So without further ado, very good morning, Professor Irwan.
Hello, good morning, Dewanti.
So please, Professor, the platform is yours.
Thank you. So my apologies, I joined a little bit late because of administrative things that I have to solve this morning. So, Excellencies, the Vice Rector, the Deans, the committee of the conference, and keynote speaker. I know Andrea already presented in UNS. Thank you for coming, and all the participants of the conference organized by the Vocational School of the university. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning. So first of all, it is such an honor for me to be given a chance to deliver a speech in this particular event, which is organized by the Vocational School of the Universitas 11 Maret. So in this special occasion, let me deliver. Oh, can I share my screen? Let me deliver a speech with the title Digital Transformation, Financial Inclusion and Sustainability, which is to some extent is in line with the topic of this conference on the post-pandemic and business sustainability. Thank you. So I can share my screen. So before I discuss on the technological development in financial sector, let us look at again the importance of the financial services in the economy. So I would like to give some empirical evidence based on our own works on several issues with regard to the role of financial inclusion and financial deepening on economic output. So this is the first paper. This is the evidence on a cross-country study investigating how finance contribute to innovation. And if we look at these two figures, it is clear that financial development at the country level, both credit and equity market is positively associated with the degree of country innovation. Means that in a country with a deeper credit and equity market, the degree of innovation is higher than compared to countries with a lower financial deepening. So this paper was recently published in the Economic Modeling in 2021. So it's clear that finance is at the country level, finance contributes to economic output. And then the second paper that I want to talk is about the finance growth nexus in the context of Indonesia. This paper was published in Global Finance Journal in 2019, I think. So we use about 29,000 firm level data across provinces in Indonesia, and we find evidence that the degree of financial deepening matter in explaining the disparity in firm performance. And yes, this is a strong result that firms in province with a deeper financial infrastructure exhibit better performance in general, especially for firms with higher financial constraint. It's mean also we prove the significant role of the financial sector to the economy, to the economic output by using the firm level data. So the first paper is the country level data. The second paper is the firm level data. And then the third paper that I want to show is micro level data. So we use more than 2,000 micro and small enterprises in Java Island. Java is the most populated island in Indonesia to find evidence whether digital financial inclusions contribute in explaining the survival and sustainability of micro and small enterprises. And clearly we find that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the survey was done in end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. And we find strong evidence that firms that have a higher selling and income most likely adopt digital technology, including online payment and online marketing. So means that the digital financial inclusion matter in explaining why some micro and small firms, they fail during the COVID, but some of them, they survive and even growing accelerated significantly during the COVID-19. So technological adoption, especially in the digital finance, matter in explaining that kind of issues. Those three papers basically confirms that financial development is one of the locomotives to drive the economy. But if we see this figure show that the financial deepening of Indonesia compared to some neighboring countries in ASEAN, the ratio of the credit to private sector of credit to private sector per GDP of Indonesia is relatively low compared to some neighboring countries. It is about 40% for Indonesia, and yes, of course, this is Indonesia, and only 40%, and far behind Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and Vietnam that have more than 100% of the ratio of the credit to private sector to GDP. So means that there is a space of the financial sector in Indonesia to contribute more to to contribute to accelerate the economic growth. And the second issue that I want to highlight is the role of digital transformation in speeding up the financial inclusion. As we show in those three papers that I explained earlier. So financial inclusion is matter in explaining the economy, and then people say that digital transformation can be a game changer in accelerating the level of the financial inclusion. So, as we have witnessed, technology has played an important role in the financial services around the world, especially in the last few decades. And the development of technological-based financial innovation has increased rapidly, especially in the recent years, because of the several reasons. First is because of the penetration of the internet and the smartphone. And then the second one is because of the development of applied technologies, for instance, the big data analytics, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, and so on and so forth. And these two factors encourage the emergence of the technological-based financial innovation. If we remember, in 1994, Bill Gates, the founder of the Microsoft, predicted that in the future, banking services would still be necessary, but banks are not, as technology can provide access to those services everywhere and not only by banks. So financial services can be served not only by banks, but by, technological firms, by the non-traditional financial provider. And now this almost happened in our daily life today. And so basically, there are three players provide technological-based financial innovation. So the first, of course, incumbent, they change the landscape of the financial services, especially in banking. They continue to advance with various technological-based product and services innovation. And the latest development in the digital banking revolution is the presence of a comprehensive digital banking services using smartphone. It is not only facilitating financial transaction, including opening accounts, saving, and making online payment, but also facilitating personal financial planning. And the second one, during the last decade, a substantial number of financial technological firm, or people say this is a fintech startup, have developed worldwide. They are not only in the payment and lending business, but also in equity market, insurance, investment, financial advisor, financial aggregator, and so on and so forth. And the third one, in addition to the emergence of the fintech firms, another issues arising is the blurring boundaries between financial firms and big technology firms that slowly provide more and more financial services. Those firms are basically large firms with established technology platform and extensive customer network. For instance, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and in the context of Indonesia, there is Gojek and some other big techs that they slowly enter to the financial services. And the last one that also rising significantly over the last few years is about the crypto asset. So crypto asset become the challenge, especially in the financial stability, because this kind of people say this is a set. Some people they say that this is not a set, and yeah, still debatable. But still, the growing transaction in the crypto asset is significant. So we need to take into account, we need to deal with that kind of new development in the crypto asset. And the emergence of the technological-based financial innovation has led to substantial implication. Of course, the first implication is that innovation in the technological-based financial services is expected to produce efficiency in operation, improve service quality, and facilitate services delivery to customers. So clearly, this will eventually be translated into profit for individual service provider in the financial sector. And at the macro level, improved access to finance can be extended to underbanked people who have a mobile phone. So eventually, it will enhance the level of financial inclusion at the country level. But as a consequence, the competitive pressure in the financial services sector have increased significantly as well, and it can affect the sustainability of incumbent and the new entry firms, as well as financial stability at the country level. So, but on the other side, we can also say that the emergence of the fintech firms or fintech companies has awakened incumbent, in this case, traditional banking, to undertake digital transformation or collaborate with fintech firms. So the emergence of fintechs, therefore, present a challenge to the conventional financial institution as the incumbent. But on the other side, it could also be a complementary to the conventional counterpart. So it's depend on which regime would be strengthened by the regulator, competition or collaboration. And so if we talk about the digital transformation, as I explained previously, so digital transformation is expected to accelerate the level of the financial inclusion. Financial inclusion refers to all initiative making formal financial services accessible and affordable, especially for underprivileged people. So it is a part of the global agenda, as many believe that financial inclusion could fuel economic development and subsequently boost the economic growth and reduce income inequality. So many argue that fintech could help improve financial inclusion significantly, especially in developing and emerging countries where the number of banks and underbanked is still relatively large and underserved by formal financial institutions. And the World Bank define financial inclusion across three aspects. First is access, the second one is usage, and the third one is the quality of financial services. So financial technology, especially in the fintech lending, has the potential to lower intermediary costs because of the speed and accessibility, and allowing for more personalized financial services that can be scaled for both unbanked and underbanked groups. And fintech payment could also help in improving the financial inclusion of micro and small enterprises, because the mobile digital payment can provide structured information related to daily transaction that are needed when applying for lending. So this is the explanation why digital transformation in the financial sector can be a game changer in accelerating financial inclusion. But on the other side, there is also a potential that fintech could widen income inequality. So there are two reasons to explain why there is a potential widening income inequality because of the growing of the fintech. So first, like a traditional financial service provider, fintech firms may look at the low income market as not beneficial, as they may not be able to generate more profit from the services, or they may deem such financial access to be too costly to sustain. Then they shifting to high income market. The second one is that the growth of the legal fintech lending to some extent can also promote the growth of illegal fintech lending. This type of predatory lending is actual online version of loan sharking, or people in Indonesia say this is a rentenir online or something like that, that offer an easy process of disbursement of a loan, but they charging excessive interest rate. And the growth of illegal fintech lending can decrease society trust in fintech while also increasing poverty and income inequalities. as those kind of lending, illegal lending, increase the probability of the borrower defaulting due to the high interest rate set by those kind of predatory lenders. And recent anecdotal evidence, not only in Indonesia, but also in some other developing countries, reveal that substantial number of poor people, they are trapped in illegal peer-to-peer lending, leading them to very difficult situation. And, we can see in the picture here that there are some evidence that even some, some trapped people, they are committing to suicide, kasus bunuh diri, something like that. So in some, there are, the good side and the dark side of the technological-based financial innovation. The potential, of course, the potential a good side of the digital finance is accelerating the financial inclusion, and then if we still trust in financial services, then accelerating financial inclusion could lead to accelerating economic growth. But on the other side, there is a potential widening income inequality because of the growing of the financial technology due to the two reasons that I already explained. So then what should we do to speed up the digital transformation and bring to the good side rather than the bad side? So means that technological-based financial innovation could be a good game changer, bringing new opportunities to the society and benefit. And then, of course, provide more and more access to people to the financial services and accelerating the level of the financial inclusion. So first, of course, both provider and regulator in the financial services must comprehensively and continuously educate the public about the use of the digital finance, especially in order to improve the society understanding of the benefit and risk of using this kind of technological-based financial services. So financial literacy should be in terms of personal finance and financial planning, helping illiterate people understand how to manage their money and prevent them from being, debt overhang or over indebted. So intensifying financial literacy and education could be achieved by cooperation, not only by financial regulator and industry, but cooperation with, let's say, for example, with NGO, university, and so on and so forth. So to highlight the issues of the disparity in financial literacy, we did a simulation using a Google search volume, or people say Google Trend, using two keywords. When we use a fintech illegal fintech, not only Java Islands that people did search on it, but when we turn to the keyword of fintech legal in the search engine, in the Google search engine, only people in Java Island explore that kind of keyword. So it indicates that there is a significant gap in the financial literacy across province in Indonesia, especially about financial technology. Improving financial literacy, especially on fintech, could also lead to higher trust to financial technology. So we are at the Center for Fintech and Banking of the university. We regularly conduct surveys to people about their trust in individual banks when they place their money, and then the trust to banking industry, trust to non-bank financial institution, and also trust to financial technology firms. And we find strong evidence that trust in financial technology is far below other financial services provider, especially banks. So bank is still strong in terms of the trust from people. But when the sample is split between those who are highly literate or financially literate, and who are not literate or illiterate people, there is a significant gap in their trust level, indicating that improving financial literacy could enhance people trust in financial services, more particular in financial technology. And then the second ones that we also highlight, especially with regard to the digital transformation is about the equal information and communication infrastructure, which is essential to promote financial inclusion using the adoption of digital finance. Therefore, especially in the Indonesian context, balancing quality of the ICT infrastructure across province is strongly necessary. And the third one that we also highlight is about the risks related to the use technology, especially with respect to security risks that should also be concerned for financial service provider in terms of both system failure and the security risk. So investment on this kind of technology should be made not only in the use of technology, but also in the designing of well-established security system. It should also be noted that operational risks stemming from the use of technology can lead to a decline in the trust, not only to the individual service provider, but also to industry and the financial system in general. So the other things that we also recommend to the policymaker and also to the industry that, of course, the interest rate on loan provided by the fintech lending should be lower. So it has to be setting up the selling price. So the legal fintech lending cannot give lending with interest rate higher than the selling price. And the second ones that we also concern is about how to shifting fintech lending channel from unproductive activities or consumption loans to more productive activities. So if there is a shifting from consumption loans to productive loan, then it would speed up the impact of the financial sector to the economic output. Then the last thing that we also consider in speed up the digital transformation is about the transparency of the financial service provider, which is necessary to ensure that the services they provide are fair and do not harm customers. So therefore, there are three essential infrastructure aspects that if it is tackled by the regulators may give benefit to the transparency of the financial services in general. So first is the better consumer protection in the financial services. And then the second one is a well-established integrated loan database channeled by financial technology and banking. So it should be merged between those two of loans. So in Indonesia, there is an integrated loan database, but it is only for banking. But for fintech, we are still the states of development of that kind of integration. And if there is an integration of the loan database in banking and fintech, then we can avoid, issues of the multiple loan in the same time in fintech and banking. And then the last one that we also consider is about the regulation on the personal data protection and comprehensive fintech regulation, which is important to protect society from unethical business practices of predatory fintech providers. And well, let me continue my talk with some points with regard to the contribution of universities, especially our universities, 11 Maret University in accelerating financial inclusion through digital transformation. Basically, it is mandated by the higher education institution. The role of university should be in three aspects. First, the education, and the second one is research, and the third one is community development. As for the education, delivering knowledge and skill with respect to digital finance should be conducted in several ways. For instance, offering degree and non-degree training on digital finance or fintech, and that is strongly encouraged to be done with the support of the financial regulator and industry. And yes, of course, it is also strongly encouraged that this kind of education should combine between soft science, people from the economic, social science, and so on and so forth, and the skills coming from the hard science, let's say information technology and computer science and so on. Universitas 11 Maret or UNS has been recognized as the pioneer in providing education on digital finance. We have included the course of financial technology in curriculum since 2019, I think. And recently, the Faculty of Economic and Business of the university has offered a new degree programs and then the graduate level on digital business. Although it is a new degree programs, the number of applications are quite large this year. So almost 2,000 applicants, even though at the end of the day, we can only take 60 selected applicants. And we also continuously collaborate with regulators and industry in some ways to help improve financial literacy and financial inclusion, especially inviting people from the industry to giving a guest lecture and so on and so forth. And we also actively invite top scholars come from the overseas in this field to deliver special lecture and talk, and also to collaborate in research and so on. So the UNS FinTech Center, one of the Center of Excellence in the university, has an annual flagship program, which is a FinTech summer courses. It is a 1-week intensive course, and in 2020, it was attended by almost 400 participants coming from 14 countries, and half of them are participants coming from overseas. And the lecturers come not only coming from the UNS, but also coming from the Financial Services Authority, from the central banks, from the World Bank, from the IFC, and some a professor coming from the overseas. And also we collaborate with the association, let's say AFP, AFTEC, and so on and so forth. And yes, the other things and the second things, with respect to the contribution of the university to the improvement of the digital finance is about the research in digital finance. So maybe UNS FinTech Center is the most productive center of excellence in Indonesia in working on digital finance. And we did some research on digital finance, both applied and academic research. And as the output, more papers and policy brief has been produced, and some of them are conducted in collaboration with the financial regulators and industry. And here are some research track that are now becoming our pipeline in the next 1 or 2 years. Let's say, for example, we are focusing on the impact of digital finance on small business financing. It is not only research, but also innovation, because we also establish some platform to test whether digital finance is essential in improving the small business financing. And the other things that we also consider is, we investigate whether the financial technology is really beneficial to accelerate inclusive growth. And also we look at the effect of digital finance on the competition, market structure in the financial industry, and subsequently regulation in the financial sector. And the last thing that we also consider, because this is part of our contribution to the SDGs as well, so we also concern on the issues of the social economic of the digital finance. And lastly, the university also actively educate and empower society on financial literacy and personal financial planning. So we insert the programs through the students community development program, or people say about the Kuliah Kerja Nyata. So there are some programs that we propose, especially in improving the financial education of the young people in the rural areas. And so I think that's all. So thank you very much for listening this talk, and hopefully this is beneficial for you all. So thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Irwan, for sharing and completing the puzzle of our discussion today, because this morning Professor Ari and also Professor Mo kind of change the landscape of not only in the finance, but also the landscape of the whole business and the economic itself. And we learned a lot from you, and you can also be very thankful because you provide us your valuable papers, and also the insight from you will be I'm pretty sure it will give some of the curiosity to the speakers, to the audience here. So, but unfortunately, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Irwan Trinugroho has another meeting agenda that cannot be leave. So, apparently, he cannot join to the question and answer session. So, let's proceed to the discussion session, and I will humbly invite Dr. Abayawansa to proceed to the stage again. And once again, I humbly invite all of the audience coming from online or offline. If you have any kind of question, just feel free to put your question for the online or Zoom participants. Feel free to raise your hand, put your question into the chat box. And for the on-site participant, you may raise your hand also, and the committee will proceed to you bring the microphone. So, for the on-site, do we have any question here? Okay. There is one question. So, Dr. Abayawansa, can you hear me? Okay. So, probably the committee, you can spotlight also Dr. Abayawansa, so he can see also here. So, please, name and your question, please.
Okay, morning everyone. My name is Maya from Accounting Study Program. As we know, pandemic has many impact almost around the world, yeah, in every sector from economic, social, politics, and education. Now, every country, and except Indonesia, start to wake up and build again in this new era. And here, I want to ask both of speaker in this event, how other countries see this situation and how solution or tips that we can do for this problem. So, in every element from student, society, and government can give any contribution to recover this situation. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Maya. So, do you get the question, Dr. Abayawansa?
Would be good if you can repeat that. I heard parts of it, but some parts I didn't hear clearly.
Yes, basically she asking about recently all of the world and all of the sector experiencing the hard way of the pandemics, and now so many countries been trying to recovering on that sector also. So do you have any input, because in Indonesia we also have like the national program of the economic recovery, so probably you can share to us what happened in the Australia, probably about the government's policy regarding how to do the economic recovery.
All right, thanks for that. I will try to answer that question, although it is outside of my area of expertise. So as you know, I'm an accounting academic, so my focus in my research is to look at how businesses are tackling climate change and engaging with sustainable development goals. So I'm not really looking at how governments respond to this. However, I have done a study which with a colleague of mine published in Accounting, Auditing and Accountability Journal a couple of years ago. We looked at how the governments, Australian government especially, takes into consideration the sustainable development goals, because we had a few years ago a Senate committee hearing looking at how best to engage with sustainable development goals. Now, Australia publishes their report as well on their progress on their SDGs. However, as many countries in the world, there's a long way to go. Different countries are taking different action in relation to SDGs. Now, the focus of developing countries is quite different to the focus of developed countries, because their focus, countries like Australia, their main focus is helping other countries achieve these sustainable development goals, because most of the goals aren't really big problems for developed countries. But still, there are areas developed countries have to work on as well, like gender diversity, for instance, is one big one, and climate change affects everyone. So the approach that countries developed countries, including countries like Australia, is adopting is an inclusive approach, trying to include a community, business, local government together to bring everyone together to find solutions to these problems. Now, a big part of that is also providing foreign aid to other countries to help them tackle these problems. Yeah, I guess that sort of answers the question, I presume.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Abayawansa. So I hope that satisfies your question regarding how we do the economic recoveries in other part of the world. So do we have any other question here in the room, please? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for giving me a time. My name is Mela and I'm from Marketing Management. I have a question for Prof. Irwan. Yeah, and my now we have shift to digital era and now everything is start to move to digital technology as you has been explained about digital finance. And my question is how to digital data security from the government, and that currently like it's like no case we have all know. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. But unfortunately, Professor Irwan is already left because he has another meeting to do with the university members. So without trying to be burden you, Dr. Abayawansa, do you have any idea about the question regarding in the digital era, the data management and like the data security issue is a thing? You know, because in Indonesia we don't really have the law. Yeah, we don't. I'm trying not to mention that one. So basically what happened is Indonesia recently have faced the problem regarding there's some hacker who becomes kind of the big issue, and Indonesia, we don't really have the policy or law regarding the data security, the cyber security. In Europe we have, in US you have, so probably you can share what the Australia have regarding the cyber security policy, because you are coming also from the accounting and finance, so probably you can also try to link the question and Europe area. So please, Dr. Abayawansa.
Okay, so unfortunately I will have to decline to answer that question because it is completely outside of my area of expertise, and if I attempt to answer that question, I'll be doing a disservice.
So unfortunately, it cannot be answered. So probably if you met Professor Irwan, just type email to him. Probably you can have a better answer and a more comprehensive answer, because it's the out of the area of Dr. Abayawansa. So do we have any question here again for the on-site audience? If not, I will proceed to the online audience who are joining us through the Zoom meeting. So we have already question from Ajeng. The question is about your presentation about the SDGs. And one of your presentation mentioning about the redefining business value creation. One of them is about how the business creating the philanthropy agenda. So can you elaborate more about this issue, please?
Right, okay. I'm not sure what the question is, but traditionally businesses have done a lot of philanthropic activities, and still businesses do that. Small businesses, big businesses, that's one of the main things that they do and claim in their reports as evidence of engaging with the SDGs. But that is a very small part of trying to help countries achieve the SDGs. For businesses to be able to make a meaningful contribution, then SDGs should be incorporated into their corporate strategy. So the business the core business should be informed by SDGs. So I have done some research looking at how different companies, especially world's biggest companies, are engaging with SDGs. So there are very large companies that are just doing philanthropic activities, right? And they think that that's how they should contribute to the SDGs. But actually doing philanthropic activities is as I said, is a way to legitimize their corporate behavior, is a way to increase their corporate reputation, is a way to manipulate public perception if they have been being in the receiving end of negative publicity, for instance. And some of the companies that we have studied, it was found that this is why they engage in that kind of philanthropic activity. Now, I'm not saying that all companies do these things because of that, like, supporting schools, supporting hospitals, and, various other community activities that they are involved in. It's not just because of that, but the focus of my talk is the need for sustainability strategy, or the SDGs, to be incorporated in the corporate strategy. So it informs their management approach. It informs their decision making. It sort of guides the governance overall in the enterprise. So this way, the value that companies are trying to create is not limited to value to investors. Companies will also then be creating value to the society and the environment. So creating value to the society and the environment is, in a way, helping countries to achieve the SDGs, because value to society, links to a lot of SDGs. Value to the environment links to a lot of SDGs as well. So this way, if the companies are looking more broadly rather than just short-term value maximization, then a lot can be achieved. And I think that's the only way to ensure that SDGs can be meaningfully met.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abayawansa, but I'm quite interested with your explanation, your response regarding the question, because you're talking about that the philanthropy agenda is trying to capture the needs of the company itself to elevate their images, but also trying to contribute to the society. But my question, and I'm wondering, is there any guidelines, because when we're talking about a company, there are some different sizes, probably like the small and medium enterprises, they do not have resources regarding the human and regarding the cost itself to do like the philanthropy agenda. And if I may mention, in Indonesia, we have more than 64 million small and medium enterprises. And those 64 micro and small medium enterprises, has a huge impact in our national GDP. Probably it's around 80 to 90%. So it's quite important. So if and regarding your answer that this philanthropy agenda is basically trying to boost both their performance but also their contribution. So is there any differences whether if the company is the small company or the big company trying to implement or trying to take a part in the philanthropy agenda?
Yes, I think your question sort of supports my point of view as well, because I'm not a big fan of corporate philanthropy. I think what is more important, as I said, is to integrate sustainability in corporate strategy. This way, companies are not doing something additional to what they are doing. So philanthropy is doing something additional to what they're doing. It's not part of their value creation activities. So if businesses are, the role of business is to create value, so sustainability should be part and parcel of that value creation. So talking about SMEs, they might not have enough funds to be allocated for philanthropy, as you said. This is especially the case during the pandemic and after in this post-recovery or post-pandemic recovery period, where they are struggling because they have been, hit hard by the pandemic. So it's unfair for us to expect them to, make contributions which are not really part of their core operations. So sustainability, as I said, should be part of their core business. So for instance, if I take an example, in one of the studies that I did, we examined a global logistic company. Now, logistic companies have a big environmental footprint because of their, impact on the climate, for instance. But and also, other resources that they consume, including, contributing to deforestation to some extent because of the material that they use in this, in their business. So what that organization is doing, they have completely refocus the way they think about their business. So now they think about the business as, it's an entity that is creating a sustainable supply chain, right? So everything that they do in that business is driven by the sustainability logic. Profit is not number one. First is sustainability. If something is not sustainable, then they would not do that. So profit becomes number two, sustainability is number one. But they look at sustainability not as an expense, but as part of the way business has to be done. So any business, small, medium-sized business, can adopt this mindset as well. And then they are not spending money unnecessarily. They're spending money in their business, but at the same time, achieving sustainable objectives. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's quite an interesting question. And probably it will be the last question on our agenda this afternoon, your time, because this conference has the theme like responding to the post-pandemic recovery signal in sustainable business perspective, and you've been shared to us about the sustainability and the SDG also. If there's any one key, I'm pretty sure there is no single answer about this one, but what is the biggest challenge to create the sustainable business after or in the post-COVID era? Dr. Abayasa, please.
The biggest challenge for business, I'll look at it from a business point of view. I guess the biggest challenge is the leadership from the top. That needs to, more recognition of the need to be a responsible corporate citizen and look at long-term shareholder value, which is also aligned with social and environmental value, right? If an organization is looking at the long term, very long term, as I said, no one can make money on a dead planet. If the senior management starts thinking about their business in this way, I think that's where change starts.
That's a really interesting answer. So I think it's confirmed with our previous speakers today that the answer to change, the answer to be sustained in terms of business and to be recovered from this pandemic is not cash, it's not money, but also, the main idea is like the human being, how to protect her and how to manage that one. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that will be the last question for our second plenary session today on the first international conference on creative economics, business management and accounting, responding post-pandemic recovery signal, sustainable business perspective. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Abayawansa, for spending your time in providing us quite interesting materials. And that's once again, I would like to say thank you very much and deliver our great gratitude for the speakers for completing the puzzle on how do we understand responding to post-pandemic recovery sustainable business perspective itself. We do learn that the main answer is not the money, it's not the funding, but the idea is how to protect as a human being. And we do learn that during this kind of difficult situation, to hand on hand helping each other and to collaborate is most important thing. I do once again thank you very much to all of the speakers and also participants, and have a good day, and I give back to the MC, Mr. Albert.
Okay, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause again for the speakers and also the moderator. Okay, so I've got to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, to fill in the presence check or the attendance list in the chat box of Zoom. Please kindly check the chat box in your Zoom, and then you can have your presence here. And ladies and gentlemen, the previous session signaled the conclusion of the plenary session with all the IEA 2022 keynote speakers. Following that, we'll take a lunch break until 12:30. Right now it's 12:05, so we have around until 12:30, right? And we're gonna start the parallel session at 13:30. So we're gonna start the parallel session later at 13:30. Okay. So following the lunch break, there will be parallel session that will start in 13:30, and the next item for the agenda. So in the parallel session, you're going to have a IC room and also a chair in the breakout rooms. Okay. Once again, at 13:30, there will be a parallel session, and there will be a PIC room and also a chair that will lead the flow of the discussion in the parallel session in the breakout rooms. Okay, and again, from the organizing committee, the conference certificate will be delivered to your email 1 week after today, and the announcement for the publication related to the articles that you sent and you present later will be sent to your email 3 weeks later. All right, so I would like to thank everyone, especially for the keynote speakers and also presenters and participants, and our dear mentor, Dewa. Thank you so much. And it's time for me to bid a farewell. I'm Albert, and it was a privilege to serve you during the parallel session. And I'm allotting the time for the PIC room and also the chair for the upcoming agenda, which is the parallel session at 13:30. All right, everyone, good day, and have a nice discussion in the parallel session. Bye. We're gonna have a lunch break right now.
Thank you.